Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into true crime cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of true crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
And I'm Megan.
And oh my God, Megan, we've got to do our voodoo.
Oh my gosh.
And
we definitely didn't do it the last one. Are you getting it?
I am.
We've got to do our voodoo, she says, to get things started off. I got the sack.
I got the sack. I got my bones. I can shake my bones. Okay. I don't know why I have to do a little tune every time that I shake. That I shake those bones, but it
being
comes
friends
out
with
to
you is like a musical. Maybe Sweeney Todd-ish, but
high school musical meets Sweeney Todd.
oh my God, it so freaking is.
I'm sorry.
Or you go into accents, or
Oh, I'd love me a good accent.
yes, you do. No, you don't. You love you a bad accent.
Yeah, right.
Let's be fair.
Thank you, because that is so true. True story. The other day, I accidentally answered the phone.
No.
Completely in a Southern accent. And then I had to just roll with it for the rest of the time. I was talking to someone that I don't have to talk to on a regular basis. They were helping me clear up something on my explanation of benefits for my,
Oh my God.
and I, for whatever reason, I answered the phone and was just like,
Hello.
I said, how y'all doing?
Oh, you were Southern.
And I was like, wait, why?
I could pull that off.
Why did I do that? I didn't even say hello. How y'all doing? And then she's like, oh, I'm good. Is this Charlotte? Well, it sure is.
Oh, for fuck's
And I'm like, what the
sake.
fuck am I doing? And the whole time I started sweating. It was the dumbest thing ever. And I hang up and my husband was like, what was that? I said, I don't know.
I developed a Southern accent.
But they fixed my issue on my insurance. And he was like, don't ever do that again. Like, I'm embarrassed.
I listened to you for 10 minutes and I don't know if I love you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm terrified. So,
Yeah.
it's all right.
No, I highly suggest you take on the Southern accent later at night, and I bet he wouldn't fucking care at
Oh,
all.
he wouldn't, because when we were in Nashville, he was enamored with this one singer, and he's like, doesn't she just have a great accent? I was like, you know it's fake, right? Because it really wasn't that good. She was from Vermont. It was not.
So you know
true
what?
Southern
You need to
accent.
tell him that accent on the phone was an involuntary response to him finding Southern accents attractive.
Right.
And
yes.
you were just exuding it for him.
It was a pheromone.
It was a pheromone
That's what happened.
response.
A chemistry occurred.
And it affected my tongue.
It did. It really did.
Sorry, all you from the South. We're going to butcher your accents
We
now.
are. We are. Oh God. And actually our case today is horrific but it's from South Africa. And I will not attempt that accent.
Okay.
We have a lot of South African listeners and they write us a lot. I love talking to them.
In South Africa, they are into their true crime.
Yeah, they really are. And this was actually suggested a long time ago, and I just wanted to make sure that I got it correct. So it took me a little while to put it all together. But this is from, I believe Nix, listener Nix sent it. That's who she is. They are on Facebook when they were writing. So I know you sent this case suggestion a long time ago, but here we are. This is the South African case of the Springs House of Horrors.
Ooh.
It's not too long ago. It happened in 2014. And the name of the perpetrators and most of the victims are not public because most of the victims are still minors.
Wow.
So it is still, they still need protection,
Okay.
obviously, because this was one of the worst cases of abuse and neglect that South Africa had seen.
You're bringing
by
me a
2000
child abuse case.
Of course I am. That's how we met, my love.
I know. You like to remind me.
This case exactly is going to resonate for like some of our first early on cases that we had together, as a matter of fact.
I love when you give me PTSD. It makes me happy.
It's our pillow talk. It really
where's
is.
my beer? Why am I only drinking water?
I know we only have water today.
We'll get to it later.
Yep. So I just wanted to tell you guys, like, right from the get-go, I'm going to name people, but they're their fake names. Okay, they're not, it's not the real names. And so just don't come at me with, oh, you did poor research. No, for the sake of the case, I'm going to have to use some sort of names so that you can follow the story, but it's not going to be their real names. And if it is their real name, I will let you know.
Okay.
If I give a real name here.
I cannot wait for the review that says, you totally got the name wrong and mispronounced it. And you can be like, it's called a pseudonym, dickhead.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly how I will respond as well.
It's true. I've seen your responses.
Yes. Okay. So from the beginning, just so you know, the mom, we're talking about a mom and a dad. This is abuse and neglect case of minor children. And so for the mom and the dad, I'm just going to call them mother or father or mom and dad. All right. At the beginning, let me tell you how these two met, how they became to be. So it's 1996. The mom in this case was 16 years old. Her own father had died when she was 11, and her mother remarried. And actually, when she remarried, she abandoned her children.
Oh.
Okay. So the mom in this case went to go live with her adult sister until she was 16. Well, when she was 16, she met a man, as they do.
16 is all kinds of hormones.
Yes.
Your body's doing weird things.
And this man would eventually become her husband and does become the father in this case that we're going to talk about. Okay. So this man was only 17 at the time. So
they're only a year apart.
Yep. The parents in this case met when they were 16 and 17 years old. At that time, the mom does drop out of school at 16. She moves in with the dad and the dad's parents. Now, it is said that their relationship turned violent and unhappy very quickly. The father would often throw the mom over his lap. Now, they're teenagers, 16 and 17, and spank her like a child in a very violent way.
I don't like that. It makes me angry.
As it should. Later, we find out during police interviews that the father also grew up in a violent home. He was sexually molested from a young age, and his parents were openly abusive to each other in front of him all of the time. And actually, it was that abuse that makes the father and the mother in this case, eventually they're living together in the father's parents' home. Their abuse of one another, so the grandparents' abuse of one another, makes them move out of the home. So the mom and the dad go away for a weekend. They're still 16 and 17 years old. They go away for a weekend somewhere. And when they're away, they get a call that his mother was dead. They return, so they come back immediately. They return home. She's laying in a pool of blood from a gunshot wound that his father had given her. And he tried to turn the gun on himself, I believe, but he survived.
So it was a murder-suicide, but he failed on the suicide.
Yes, correct. So that was the domestic violence, like murder-suicide attempt that puts his father in prison. He goes to prison.
Yes.
And so now the couple has no home. So they're no longer with those, well, his mother died. But so they move in with another relative. Okay. So they get married February 1998. So they were together for 2 years. All of this happens. That murder-suicide happens. They get officially married in 1998. And then they have their first daughter, Yolandi, together. Now, Yolandi, this is her real name. Don't come at me for my pronunciation. I don't have a South African accent. They say it a lot more beautiful than I do.
It's a pretty name.
It is a gorgeous name. She calls herself Landy.
Oh, okay.
And
I love a good nickname.
Yes.
We're a nickname kind of family at my house.
Yep, we are too. And as you all know, if you listen, well, my family did. But anyway, so Landy actually wrote a book on this case, and it will be linked.
Her own story, telling her story?
Yes, but it is only available in Afrikaans. This is why it took me a long time to put this case together.
Trying to find some translation.
Yes. Hopefully one day it'll be available in English so that more people can know her story from her point of view. But right now it's only available in Afrikaans.
Okay.
So what happens is they marry, they have Landy, and they moved a lot in Landy's early years, and they struggled a lot because her father could not keep a job. They would bounce around. They did always seem to return to like the East Rand area, though. And throughout her, I mean, we're going to find out this is just how this guy was, but even in Landy's early childhood years, he's the type of guy that was described as always bubbling beneath the surface. He is angry at the drop of a hat. He is unpredictable. I'm sure that we have some personality disorder diagnoses that could come out of here. But he is not entirely emotionally stable. When Landy was 5, her brother was born. We're going to call him Pete for absolutely no reason other than the fact that I need to connect a name so you can keep, because there are 5 children.
Okay.
So you can keep them straight.
So Pete is child number 2.
Pete is child number 2. Landy was 5 when he was born.
That's a pretty big stretch.
Yeah.
In age gap there.
Now, their mother did have small affections for Pete. She did try to kind of play with him a little bit, but eventually she stopped showing affection to Pete. She never really gave affection to Landy that Landy could ever remember. She was not a nurturing mother.
She didn't have
at all
a bond.
No. Now, we will get to it later, but the mother is and was found to be a victim of domestic violence in this situation. Okay. But I think there is a lot of disconnect. There's a lot of emotional disassociation that takes place because this man is extremely abusive and she does nothing to stop it. And I think part of that reason is because of her disassociation. And she knows if she did try to stop it, he would probably kill her too. I think right from the get-go, she knows that she can't bond with these kids. Because if she bonded with them, she would feel the need to protect them. And that puts her at risk.
You're supposed to do that as a parent.
Yes, you are. We will
put yourself
at
risk and protect them.
Yep, we will talk about failure to protect for sure. So after Pete was born, the father became even more difficult because he would explode daily with angry outbursts. Landy actually uses the word meek to describe her mother a lot, like a meek and mousy type of person. She was not helping during these angry outbursts at all. She certainly wasn't getting, involved in stopping them. There was a ton of physical discipline, lots of domestic violence when these 2 were little. Now, Landy did attend school until the 3rd grade. She failed the 3rd grade, and it was at that point in time that she never went back. And it was being reported to the education authorities that she was being homeschooled, but she was not. Landy actually ends up being the only child that comes out of this couple that can read and write.
Oh, so she did have enough schooling to teach herself kind of the rest?
Yep. So she was capable enough to do that. Landy's birth is also the only one that becomes registered. There's only record of Landy, not the others. And that is
the rest are all born at home? Never reported?
They never filled out the paperwork to get the birth registered after they were delivered.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so that's how they skirt around the education authority.
Sure.
Afterwards, because
if the state don't know you exist, the state can't cite you.
Yeah. What they told Landy about why she wasn't going back to school was that the world was too dangerous. So they were going to keep her home to protect her from monsters, which of course to a 3rd grader makes sense, right? My parents are just protecting me. Meanwhile, her dad is the literal monster.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to trap you here.
When her brother Peter was 3 years old, she recalls that he was physically beaten anytime that he was within reach of her father. He would just get slaps in the face just for walking by his dad. Absolutely no reason for it whatsoever.
I want to cry already. Has anybody ever picked this 3-year-old up and hugged him ever?
No, he did not his mom tried in the beginning to have small affections, but no, there's no physical comforting that happens outside of Landy. What we're going to see is Landy takes on the caretaking role.
She's going to become mom.
She does. Yep. She remembered in her book once that her father didn't have a fork to eat his food with. And they were in the car. Okay, they were getting takeouts, something like that. And So in response to a restaurant worker not remembering his fork, he pulls the car over, beat both of the children, and then threw Peter out of the car and drove away. Peter had to run to jump into the back of the vehicle so his father did not leave him. All over him not getting a fork when he could have just turned around and went back to the restaurant and asked for the fork. This is the type of emotional instability and anger that we are dealing with. In 2009, the mother gives birth to another child. So this has been quite some years as well, because Landy, if we're following along here, Landy was born in 1998. And then Peter would have been born in like 2003 because Landy was 5. And so now it's 2009. And the mother gives birth to another child, a daughter that we're going to call Lee. And then shortly after that, we're talking less than a year apart, she gives birth to another daughter who we will call Anne.
Okay.
All right.
So there's big gaps in these kids, and then all of a sudden Lee and Anne are Irish twins.
They are.
Like 9 months,
yes.
12 months apart.
Yep. So when Landy was 12, they moved to a large double-story brick home, and it was very expensive. It was like $16,000 a month rent, and her father was supposedly a used car salesman. But after struggling so much and, of course, with Landy only being 12, she has no idea how they're affording it, right? Well, it turns out that her father is dealing and using methamphetamine.
Oh, he's a drug dealer.
Yeah, posing as a used car salesman.
I'm kind of impressed that somebody who's a methamphetamine addict is able to sell enough product to afford that kind of lifestyle. I don't usually see that with methamphetamine when you're a user also.
Right. Well, what surprised me is that he was using and selling. But here's the thing. It was a very large home. It had a lot of rooms. They rented him out.
Oh,
he was an entrepreneur, Megan.
See. He was a landlord.
Yeah, which becomes a horrible situation.
Yeah, he's probably got his own clientele in there, right? You're renting it out to the people buying your product.
Well, for sure. And also there are sex workers that are renting it out for their sex work, and things get,
thank you.
In there. Also an interesting fact, he starts using steroids because he's going to the gym excessively. Of course, when you're hopped up on methamphetamines.
You got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I got to work out. I'm going to clean my house. I'm going to change the oil.
Yes. Yeah. Cleaning the house, no. Not something he ever did. We'll find out these kids lived in squalor. But he was working on himself because they start having a whole bunch of orgy parties. So he's got to have himself a physique.
Do you, though? If everybody's hopped up on meth?
I don't think so.
You know what I'd rather have?
I'm not sure. Does everybody look prettier on meth?
I don't know. If you were going to go to an orgy, would you rather have people with 6-packs or teeth? I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, beauty is but a light switch away, but those 6-packs you can feel.
Okay. So, just no kissing on the mouth.
Yes. So that's where Dad's at this point in time.
Yeah.
The gym a lot. Steroids a lot, which if you know anything about steroids, they make you, well, yes, let's do the shrinking penis sound because it definitely shrinks your ball sack from what I hear. But also they make you aggressive.
Rage.
Mm-hmm. And I can
It's literally called roid rage.
It is. I even struggle with the prescription steroids. I am irritable. I am mean. I just went through a week of having to take 2 different steroids and I was a bitch the whole entire time.
Yeah, they do.
Ask one of the listeners that wrote us a really rude email and I wrote a rude email back.
It was roid rage.
That was the roid rage. It absolutely was. Because plus he's using meth too.
Sure.
So you've got to think, and he was already emotionally unstable. So this is a recipe for disaster.
Oh yeah.
The kids had to be at their father's beck and call. Now, this is mostly Peter and Landy. The other kids are toddlers. Even when shit goes down in this case, the other kids are toddlers. They were horrifically abused as well. But the older 2 kids are the slaves of the household. They have to be at their dad's beck and call. If they did not respond fast enough, they would get beaten. He was looking for reasons. He would create scenarios and reasons to be able to beat them. Just like Stephen Smith's father. Do you remember in that case how he would just nitpick at everything just because simply he wanted to beat something? That's what this dad does. Now, the mother did have to go to work with the father every day because she can't be out of his sight.
Oh.
He is an absolute stereotypical batterer. He controls the finances. He isolates from family and friends. She cannot be out of his sight.
Okay.
Ever.
So off to work she goes.
She goes to work with him at the salesman lot or whatever job he has. He's, running drugs, really.
Selling cars and running drugs.
Yep. Which leaves the kids all alone. So Landy, and she's 12, she becomes the full-time caregiver of Pete, Lee, and Ann.
That might be the best thing that happened for those kids.
And really, they end up having, when they moved into this big brick house, she was pregnant the mom was pregnant with another child. And at this time, by the time she has that child, really each subsequent child that she had, she cared for them less and less before handing them on to Landy. She tried to care for Pete for a little bit, and then eventually Landy becomes his full-time caregiver. Well, same thing for Ann and Lee. She cared for him for a little bit, like with Lee, and then the baby was passed on to Landy. Well, then the next one, it's like a shorter duration each time.
Well, and there wasn't a long time between those two anyway.
Nope, exactly. Landy literally raised these children as her own, taught them everything. We'll get to it, but when they get busted, the social workers and the police officers actually openly admit that they thought those children were Landy's.
Really? Because
they call her mom. Okay. And so they just assumed that the way that they clung to her, the way that they reacted to her, they thought they were all the mom and the dad's grandchildren.
No shit.
Yeah, they thought.
And she was only 12.
When this goes down, she's older.
Okay.
But she starts being the full-time caregiver of 2 infants and a small boy.
8-year-old, 7-year-old, yeah.
Mm-hmm, at the age of 12. They actually would even call their real mother by her name.
She probably liked that.
I'm sure. Because she doesn't really want to be a mom.
No.
And then they called Landy mom. They had to stay inside. Of course, they're not allowed outside because neighbors would wonder why they're not in school and, turn them in.
And beaten if he beats,
they would see bruises. They would see those things. So they're not allowed to go outside. Landy was in charge of all the family meals, all the cleaning. And like we've seen in cases like this before, it didn't matter how well she did anything. Her dad would find a reason to find fault with it. And you're going to, when we get to the specifics of what they find when they do finally bust this house, it is in squalor. When Landy tells her story, she talks about how her and Pete were cleaning constantly, right? But you have something that you have to keep in mind. When behaviors aren't modeled for you of how to do something, it might not be the same standard that we're thinking in our brain, right? So when we're thinking this house must be immaculate because they're cleaning all the time. Well, they're cleaning and picking up to what potential they know. Okay, so she wasn't really taught how to do the dishes, right? So she's doing the best that she can, but the fact of the matter is she's always picking up after someone, cleaning up after someone. Plus they're having these huge parties in this house, drugs, alcohol, sex everywhere. And so she's got all these people coming in and out that she's also trying to clean up after. She wasn't really able to keep up with all this stuff, but she certainly had enough to keep her busy to her potential of what she knew clean was. It wasn't the standard that like you and I would use, right, Megan, or that maybe is more commonly known as being clean. But she was always doing some sort of household chore and trying to keep food in these young children's bellies too.
Right.
Landy did describe how her and Pete did try really hard to protect the younger 3 children as best that they could. But unfortunately, there were times that their dad would take the rage out on the toddlers and the baby as well. She recalled the one time when the youngest child was a boy that is born, and we're going to call him Harry. Okay. She recalled that when Harry was just 2 years old, her dad actually grabbed him by his feet and swung him around in a circle and slammed him on a table.
He could have died.
Oh,
just
absolutely.
From that.
Yep. The other young toddlers, Lee and Ann, she recalled that they would be drug up the stairs and down the stairs by their hair. And there were a couple of times where they were just kicked in the face while they were walking by their dad for absolutely no reason. As he is doing all of this and he's doing all of his drug running and his drugs that he's using as well, he's becoming paranoid.
What?
Yep. So he installs 37 cameras throughout the house so that the children are watched day and night. He would come home, demand that Landy remove his shoes, and then he would watch and check the cameras for anything that he considered wrongdoing on their part. If he felt that the older children were sitting down too long, that he found them on the camera sitting down too long, they would get a beating for it. Did they disappear from the camera too long? Does that mean they went outside? They would be beaten again for that. He would then spend his time on the weekends checking the camera footage again to make sure that he didn't miss anything that he could potentially harm them for, beat them for.
Needs a fucking life.
Mm-hmm. So when the family would visit, because this often comes up in child abuse cases like this, like
why
how
didn't
does
anyone
the family
know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When the family would visit or others would come around, he would play the role of the perfect, loving, doting father, even going as far as taking them outside and like playing catch with them.
No shit. Did they even know how to do that?
I highly doubt it.
As the ball hits you right in the face because
Right,
no one's ever played.
No one's taught you to
with you
catch a
before.
ball. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure Landy had, not in the yard,
well, that's
but
true.
on the inside. So let's talk about the tenants a little bit. The tenants, they were not your regular kind of tenants. There was at least one that was a sex worker. She didn't actually live there. That's not where she lived. She just rented the room out for her work.
Well, yeah.
Landy was
take that shit home with you.
Right. Got to keep that separate.
Take it to the house with her small children instead.
Yes. Landy had to clean the room before
Oh, God.
and after.
No, Charnell.
Yes. I'm sorry
That's
to say.
awful.
They were also told whenever they had like the big orgy parties, they were always told that they needed to stay in their room. They didn't want a lot of their friends knowing that they even had children, so they weren't allowed, to be out of their room. Well, one time Landy was hungry and she wanted to go downstairs and sneak a slice of bread. So she goes downstairs and she sees her mom and a friend running naked around the living room while like chasing each other while men watched. And they were these kids, as we often see in these cases too, were extremely aware of the strange sexual relationship that their parents had, unfortunately.
Yeah, they become hyper aware. They know, well, the parents don't hide it.
No.
It's not like they had boundaries anyway.
We do know, her mom does later report that she was repeatedly raped by the father.
I believe it.
Yep. And because he was of the opinion that he is a man and sex is his right as a man from any woman that he wanted it from at any time.
Yeah, we see this all the time.
Do. Yep. We also see this all the time. He was absolutely obsessed with sex and pornography. The parties that they held, they were always playing very aggressive porn on, televisions, things like that. They're openly having orgies with one another. And of course, when Landy is 14,
oh God,
she is no longer forced to stay upstairs during these parties. But it wasn't going where I thought it was going.
Okay, thank you.
She is actually expected to be their waitress and serve them.
Oh.
She's got to bring them drinks. She has to keep their guests comfortable, anything that they wanted.
Grab them a towel for after the orgy.
Yes. Yep. Part of the cleanup crew.
Great.
Yep.
Spray a bottle of bleach. Let me get that for you, sir.
And keep in mind, all of this, Megan, is after she has cared for 4 children all day and been doing the chores and cooking and cleaning.
And now she's entertaining.
And being a mother at 14 to these 4 children. And now at night, well into the wee hours of the morning, she has to be at her parents' beck and call to serve up drinks, drugs, tobacco, and deal with the orgies. Mm-hmm. Now, one day she fell asleep literally on the stairs, and when she was supposed to be serving at one of their parties.
Oh, this poor thing.
And of course, she got in trouble, and her dad gave her a drug that he made her snort up her nose to keep her awake.
He gave her fucking meth.
Mm-hmm. From that point on, her parents would give her drugs several times a week to keep her awake so that she could wait on them during their orgy drug drinking parties. Yes. I wish I knew these people's names because I would come up with a quippy party name using their last name in some sort of, slander, but I do not. Oh. They also gave her alcohol. And this just is disgusting. Just pissed me off. So her mom's cousin was over visiting the father. and he was young. He was in his early 20s one time. And the dad made some sort of comment of like, what do you think that I should do with these brats or something like that, like talking bad about the kids. And this cousin starts looking up torture methods on Google.
What?
In response, like, oh, here's methods of torture.
Yeah, because that's a normal response for a house guest, a cousin.
One of the toddlers had like pissed the 20-year-old off, because they're fucking toddlers and most toddlers are dicks because they don't know the world yet. Like, get over yourself. And that's when the father's like, well, what do you think that I should do, as punishment? So he Googles torture. And from that point on, this is when Landy and Peter experience waterboarding for the first time. And this starts to escalate.
Thanks, Uncle Frank.
Yeah, exactly. You dumb fuck. Yep. So this starts to escalate the abuse and the torture that's happening in the home. When he would waterboard them, he would have them lay face up with their backs like across. So their backs are on the bottom of the bathtub. They've got a washcloth over their face, and he would turn water on over their face for hours.
Yep, that's waterboarding.
Yep. He decided that he really liked water as a method of torture at this point in time. He'd make them sit in cold baths in the middle of the winter.
No.
He'd hold their head underwater up until the point where they almost drowned. And then at the end of each beating, and this went for all of the kids, he would have Landy fetch a bucket of water so that he could just throw it in their face after he was done beating each child. He also brought home an electric cattle prod that he used to combine the water torture and electricity with. Now he's a professor that's going to start experiments, Megan. This was only for Landy and Peter. He didn't do this to the toddlers, but they would sit in an ice cold water, and then he would just prod them and poke them with this electric cattle prod, which isn't enough to kill anything, but it causes excruciating pain.
Yeah.
He also had a small airsoft gun that would shoot small pellets, and he would use that.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, he'd use that on them as well.
Beautiful, tiny little bullet-shaped bruises all over you if you bruise easy.
Yeah, yeah. He also had a torch that he would burn them with and then refuse them burn treatment afterwards. He used pepper spray. Like I said, all of the kids got the abuse from this guy, but the child who suffered the most, for whatever reason, was Peter, the firstborn son. He was tied up regularly and beaten. He was left tied up overnight pretty regularly. Landy would come and feed him when she could. She would come and try to tend to his wounds when she could, but she couldn't take him down.
No,
because then she risks the same abuse.
Then there's no one to take care of the other kids.
Right. There was one time when the father thought that police were onto him because of his drug activities, so he instructed Peter to watch the CCTV camera footage on the corner of their street. And the child did, but after several hours, he grew really bored of that, so he switched over to a regular TV show, and the father found out. Mm-hmm. The TV was broken over Peter's head in response.
I can't believe he didn't accidentally kill this child.
Oh, I know. Well, in this incident, his ear was split into two, and they had no choice but to take him to the hospital.
Oh.
Now, you'd think, but the mom came back a short time later because the ER was taking too long, and she knew she couldn't be away from the home without him for a long period of time, or she was going to get beat. So they were taking too long, so he never did get his ear fixed. Landy put plaster on it.
Really?
What was described as a plaster to try to plaster his ear back together as best she could. It did not work.
Of course not.
And he's got a permanent gap in his ear because of this.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. He did try to drown Peter in a swimming pool.
Like legitimately kill him.
Was holding him underwater in the swimming pool. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what stopped him from doing this?
I am not sure, but he had to bring him back. He had to administer CPR from what I understand.
Wow.
So he did almost drowned in a swimming pool. Now, the mom did have a car and could drive. Of course not. She couldn't drive without her husband's permission.
She was capable of driving. She wasn't allowed to.
She had hands, feet, and a brain enough to drive. Right. But yes, she could only do it when he allowed. And she knew she was on a timer. You know, she couldn't be gone too long. There were many times that she was often tied up and beaten as well. And actually, once he stabbed her in the buttocks, she had to have stitches. Now, Landy has no idea how she explained this away, but he was like surprised when he stabbed her. He was like, well, I thought it was blunt. Like, I can't believe it really stabbed you. And then like, he's talking about how, well, there's blood. Yeah, that's what happens when you fucking stab someone. So he just had not even like, of course he had no remorse, but he just like acted surprised that when you chase someone with a knife and put it into their body that it causes harm, apparently. There was another time that the father had actually beat the mother with what was described as a snooker cue.
What the hell's a snooker cue?
Yeah, I was picturing it like a pool cue, stick, a pool stick.
I wonder is that what snooker is?
So he beat her with a snooker cue, and a piece of wood broke off in her cheek, and they couldn't get it out. So he had to take her to the hospital. Yes, snooker is like what we would call
similar to pool.
Mm-hmm. So it's a pool stick, essentially. Landy was given hand-me-downs from her mom, so as a young girl, she's dressed in very provocative clothing because her father told her mother what she was allowed to wear. And it was all very, very sexually oriented, very
keep
provocative.
Waiting for you to go there with me, but like I'm waiting for it.
I'll just keep going. We'll get some places.
Well, it does help with her waitressing activities, right? He wants her to come and wait on all of the orgy participants, and she can look,
And they're probably going to come and buy more drugs.
Well, yeah.
Of course, none of the money that he made using drugs was ever given to his kids. I think that goes without saying, right?
I think we knew that.
He would leave a small amount of money on the table for Landy to buy supplies, but she mostly needed them for diapers and formula, so there really was not enough food left over for groceries. Not only that, but she doesn't have a way of getting them. She can't go to the store. She's not allowed to leave the fucking house. So I will say this, though. The parents did always have nice new clothing, and he liked to eat out a lot.
People could see them.
He loved fast food, so he ate out plenty. Landy did what she could to make pasta go a long way for them. Once in a while, they would get, fast food out or whatnot. But if the dad got mad about anything, he would eat their food instead of giving them their dinner.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
He's so fucking petty.
When the kids are eventually found, they do all have rotted teeth because of their poor diet and because they were so emaciated. Landy was not proud of this, but she did admit that she would often have to steal from the wallets of the tenants so that she could get food for her and the kids to eat.
Makes perfect sense.
And what she would have to do is steal the money from a tenant or ask the tenant for money, but then ask a different tenant to go and get food for them. Like, can you go, and get the groceries?
Yeah, again, she's not driving.
And I think this goes without saying, but there's not enough food for the kids, but there's plenty of alcohol, drugs, and cigarettes in large supply for the adults.
There is.
When one of the kids would get sick, he didn't give extra money for medicine.
If any medicine.
Right.
His kid about had his ear tore off from a TV and nothing happened.
No, he put plaster on it. Jeez. Well, Landy did. He didn't even.
She had to try something, right?
Yep. So if one of the kids were sick, and they were sick often, they're not living in sanitary conditions. They do not have a good diet. So they are often sick. When they were, she would prioritize and she would get the medicine that the kids needed, and then they would go without food. I'll take you to her 16th birthday, where shockingly he gets her a car.
What?
A smart car, as a matter of fact, is what it was described at, even though she has no idea how to drive. She's not been taught anything. No, don't worry. She got to sit in it. She couldn't drive it, of course. A couple of days later, it disappeared. He probably had never really bought it, but just brought it home as a cruel joke for her, so he could take it away again. And it was probably just borrowed from one of the secondhand lots that he quote unquote worked for.
And here I thought just for a minute that he might actually get her a car because it would make it easier for him to, she could go and run and do stuff and truly be the chauffeur at this point.
Yep. No. She got to sit in it.
Maybe she could drive him out to dinner at night.
Yep. It just gave him more power because then he could take it away from her.
Yeah.
That car was the first birthday gift that Landy ever got.
Had ever had.
And
she had it for 2 whole days.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, this is where we will do a trigger alert for sexual abuse, not just the physical abuse, and where you were expecting all of this to
I've
go.
been waiting.
Mm-hmm. After she turned 16, just a couple of weeks after, she was raped for the first time by her father. One of the toddlers had actually cut their toe on something around the house, and so the mom had to take the child to the hospital for stitches. And when this happened, he called Landy to his bedroom, told her to remove her clothing, and proceeded to rape her when the mother was not home. So now his form of torture turns sexual, and she's regularly raped by her father as well as physically beaten by him. She states several times that she would rather be beaten over and over and over again than to ever endure the sexual abuse. He started to tell her about his sex life, and he made her watch porn with him, and this went on for several months on a regular basis. Very common. We do see this a lot, unfortunately.
They try to desensitize,
groom.
He didn't do much grooming though prior.
No. Well,
like,
unless you
birthday.
count when she turned 14 and having her be a part of the orgies.
You know what? I lied. You're right.
Yeah, that's all grooming.
He was grooming her.
Yep. Desensitizing her to all of that.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, I'm going to take you to May 19th, 2014. Landy is 16 at this time. And Peter is 11. He is starting to challenge his father more. He's starting to rebel more during his beatings. Now, one night, his dad wanted fast food and was looking for his car keys. He got mad because he couldn't find them, and Peter could see the rage coming in his eyes. So he ran outside to the dark backyard, and his father was pissed that he ran outside, but he was hungry, so he found his keys, luckily, and it distracted him, and he left. So, but at this point in time, Peter had just fucking had enough. He was done. So he scales the wall in the backyard. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, he's like, I'm escaping.
Mm-hmm. Landy tried to stop him because she knew that his punishment would be horrible. And if he was not home when their father came back from getting food, right? She is trying to keep the peace. This is very common. Now, the next door neighbors were the Fenter family. And they were all at this point in time in bed, except their 18-year-old daughter, Charnell. She was still up, sitting in the living room, looking through Facebook. Their little dogs start to barking, and she realizes that there's a little tap on the door, kind of like the one that just happened on our office door.
It was a little bit creepy.
That was weird.
It's a dog.
Mm-hmm. So Mr. Fenter heard the dogs barking, heard the knocking on the door. So he comes to the door just as Chandra was reaching the door. And they just kind of pull back their curtain a little bit, and they see Peter, who they don't recognize at the time.
Well, they don't see the kids because they don't play outside.
No, they did not know that Peter lived next door. Okay. They don't know that this is a neighbor. They also don't know that this is an 11-year-old boy, because he's so small and so emaciated that they think, and he's wearing nothing but his underwear. Shorts, like shorts and underwear.
Yeah.
And they think that he's like a 7 and 8-year-old boy. Okay.
We've heard this happen many times.
Yep. They can also see that his torso is covered in scars and bruises. They open the door and he says immediately, "Please don't tell my father I'm here." So they take him in, they get him a blanket and shirt. All they're thinking is just how tiny this little boy is. And Chandra actually realizes he's not shivering from being cold. He's shivering from fear. And he is saying to them, "If my father finds me, he will kill me." And that's all that he would say, Megan. He would not tell them anything else. Just, "If my father finds me, he will kill me." They don't know what to do. Mrs. Fenter is now awake and has joined the family in the living room. They've only met their next door neighbors once. They had no idea that they had children.
No, they've hidden them.
Right. They recalled that she was pregnant when they moved in.
And then never saw a baby.
Right. And they never, and at this point in time, that child is 2. So they just don't, think about it like that they've not seen the baby. Yep. Okay. Now, from what I understand, they did try to call CPS, the equivalent of what our Child Protective Services is, but there was no answer. There's like an emergency line. I mean, this is South Africa. I don't know
how it works.
Yep. I don't know exactly how it worked in 2014, but there was no answer. They didn't want to call the police because they felt that the police would return the child to the parents.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
probably true.
It was obvious that this child is terrified. But before they could even make a decision, Megan, a knock comes to the door.
No, he came looking for him.
It was Landy with her mother at the door. So they open the door. Landy sounds desperate and says, "Please send my brother outside. He has to come home before my father gets home." The mother was also trying to coax Peter outside of the home, convincing him. She kept saying that he's not going to be in trouble. He's not going to be in trouble if he just comes home right now.
You are.
Mm-hmm. And before anyone knew what the fuck was going on, as they're standing on that door, in the doorway, trying to coax him out of the house, all of a sudden the fucking father is in these people's living room. He never addresses the Fenters, and this is their home. He just walked right in, slaps Peter across the face, grabs his arm, and was out of the living room without one word to the Fenters. All they heard was him muttering about how he was going to kill him.
Oh my God.
And to this, I'm like, oh, fuck no. Like, you just barged into my home, slapped your child across the face, your tiny child across the face.
And dragged.
Grabbed him by the arm. Then the mom mutters to them, "So sorry for the trouble. My son, he's very naughty." So the mom is just like, I'm blaming it on the son. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. My son is very naughty.
Oh, yeah. Because they believed that.
Yeah. And
No
now,
way.
and here's a trigger alert to child abuse, just so you know. That night, Peter was tied to the snooker table, and he was beaten so harshly that he could not open his eyes. Landy was allowed later to feed him, and she described how his eyes looked like 2 pieces of liver. So that was May 19th, 2014. On May 20th, 2014, a call came into the Springs Police Department from a woman who was concerned about her neighbor boy. She told police that the young boy had climbed the wall separating the 2 properties and was terrified. He was starving. He had marks all over his body. The boy's parents arrived a short while later, claiming that he was always making up stories and his father had slapped him and the child rapidly in front of her and took him home. So she's calling in. She wanted a wellness check.
Okay.
All right. She explained that she and her husband didn't know what to do. They let the evening events go by and then decided in the morning to call the police. So after describing for them what they saw on his body and things like that, later that day, May 20th, 2014, 17 police officers and 3 social workers descend upon the large double-story home of that 11-year-old boy. He turns out to be 11, on Plantation Road in Springs, an area that's just east of Johannesburg in South Africa.
Springs.
So this was what
Now we have the name of the house.
Now you know why it's called the Springs
of Horrors.
Yep, the Springs House of Horrors.
It's the part in the movie where it makes sense what the title was.
Uh-huh. Sure is. We just got there. So there's a guard at the gate of the home, which was very unusual. They're like, what the heck? Now, you and I know this isn't unusual because it's a drug house.
Right.
Of course they have a guard.
We have to know who comes in here.
Mm-hmm.
The popo come in. We've got
we've
the
got
drugs.
17 police officers and 3 social workers jumping up in our shit here. So this man radioed to someone in the house and reported that the police were there. They had a warrant. So they didn't need to wait for the niceties, but they did. They're trying to get,
Okay.
some cooperation right from the get-go.
That plays well with others that I wish that I had as a human.
A very frail, it was described as a frail, stick-figured looking blonde woman opens the door, motions for them to come into the house. This is the mother.
Okay.
So they get to the house that day and they can see pretty immediately that they need to remove these children. All right. 4 children were removed from the house that day.
They left Landry.
There were 3 toddlers under the age of 5 and a 16-year-old girl. The 11-year-old boy who had escaped the neighbors the night before was missing.
Oh, fuck.
The social worker described the state of the house as smelling really bad of old cigarette smoke and mold. There were
sex.
Right, exactly. And moldy cum, for fuck's sake.
I think that's a good name for this guy.
Oh,
they didn't give us names.
They didn't. That's his name from now on.
MC.
Just moldy cum. The kids were filthy. They were in tattered clothing. They thought that the 3 smaller children were Landy's because of the way that they clung to her and called her mother, of course. They saw all kinds of needles. There were rats running around the home everywhere. There was porn everywhere. There was damage everywhere. The toilets had no toilet seats. All the doors were kicked in. The basins, the water basins in the bathrooms were broken. There were women's clothing from numerous orgies and tenants laying everywhere. This is why I gave you that little saying earlier of, I know what you're thinking. Landy was cleaning all the time and doing things that her father like made her do all the time. But more than likely, this was clean to her because of the squalor that she was used to living in. So there's just party paraphernalia everywhere, just human paraphernalia.
I can picture the
waste.
house.
Oh, absolutely. Been there a million times.
I was just going to, yes, you have.
So, of course, when the police arrive, the father is acting like a dick, demanding to know what they wanted.
Show me your warrant.
Right. And
Where's
like,
your warrant?
And
well, here it is.
This is so unjust. How dare you? Like, how can people come in and see the state of the home and you're like, you've got no right to be here? No, just the state of the home alone is enough to remove these children.
Right.
Take away all of the physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Just the state of the home. You could, and there's plenty of pictures. That's enough to warrant a removal right there.
That's called environmental neglect.
Yes.
They don't even know yet. Well, and they have some evidence of physical abuse because of what was reported by the neighbors.
Yep. And they can see it on the other kids now at this point, now that they can see the other children.
Okay.
So they do ask, where's Peter? Where's this young boy that they know exists because this is how the neighbors called this in.
We're here because of Peter.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Father claimed he ran away.
He didn't run away.
He didn't. And I'm not going to leave you in suspense with it because I just feel like that's cruel to do to our listeners and to you. And you've been traumatized enough.
I just need to know. Tell me.
When in truth, when he heard, when it was radioed by his meat man at the gates that the police were there, he untied Peter from the snooker table, dunked him in the pool to wash away the blood, and then hid him in the ceiling of a room in one of the tenants' rooms.
Okay, he didn't kill him.
He did not.
Thank you. This is where I thought it was going, and so I just needed to know.
I know. That's why I'm not gonna leave you in that way. We don't need unnecessary drama here. It's dramatic enough.
Okay, I can take my hands off my boobs now.
Right, your comfort breasts. Your husband's, if he's listening, he's like, those are my comfort breasts. Stop it. So he actually, truth be told, the moldy cum tried to hide in the ceiling as well.
Oh, he tried to hide with Peter.
Yep, sure did. But he couldn't fit. It was all those steroids and muscles must be.
My God. I like a
like
man
how it all comes around.
Who's so thick that he can't fit in my ceiling.
He can't hide in a ceiling tile. Yeah. And he knew that his wife was going to rat him out. So
isn't that fantastic?
Tried to fucking hide. Big tough guy tries to hide in a fucking ceiling. So the house was searched. They did not find Peter in the ceiling.
Really?
Mm-mm. So the mother tells the investigators that she was homeschooling all the kids. Of course, she couldn't produce any documents to prove this.
Seen that before.
They also could see that none of the children could read or write.
Right.
Okay. The father had then, when they left, father takes Peter out of the ceiling and takes him to a relative's home in one of the free states and told the relatives that the boy was in trouble for fighting in school and needed to stay with them. Because the boy's eyes literally do look like liver.
Yeah,
so he's got to explain that away.
He's got to be like, he's been punched.
Mm-hmm. He was fighting. He's being naughty. So we need him to stay with you.
Okay.
The parents continue to tell the police that they don't know where Peter was, that he was a runaway. And they even opened a missing persons case for him.
How nice of them.
Yeah. Within a week, Moldy Cum, the father, is arrested. And then the mother shortly after. This is after they're able to do their forensic interviews with Landy and seeing the state of everything. Okay. At this point in time, when they arrest the mom and the dad, they assume Peter's dead. They've heard enough from Landy and from the neighbor describing what they saw on Peter and how Landy described how Peter, last she knew, he was tied up on a snooker table.
Right.
In the condition that he looked, So they really are thinking we're searching for a body.
We're searching for a body, absolutely. I would be too.
Separated from her husband, the mom finally cooperates and tells the police where Peter is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. He did have a few days to heal, But even with that,
The black eyes.
the police, they're shocked in the state that they find this boy,
Okay.
even after he had been able to heal for a few days from being concealed. So
You don't heal fast when you're malnourished either. So
that's exactly right.
if you kept your kid healthy while you were beating the shit out of him, maybe you would have healed better.
Yep. The charges against the father were numerous. They included charges of rape for Landy.
Oh, she disclosed.
She did. Yep.
Good girl.
Attempted murder of Peter, obstruction of justice. They had 5 child abuse charges, 5 charges of neglect because there's 5 children. Remember, breaking the Schools Act. They charged him with that. Showing pornography to a minor and distribution of meth. The mother was charged with child abuse, neglect, and defeating the ends of justice. Because
Obstruction.
Yep. That's what. Yep. They call it defeating the ends of, but for us, it's obstruction.
It sounds so much better than obstruction of justice.
Defeating the ends of justice. I like it. Rolls off the tongue nicely.
Nice job with your naming of your statute, South Africa.
The mother was released on bail, but it was decided to not allow the father out on bond because the community wanted him dead. And they actually didn't release him on bond for his own protection.
That's interesting. He's a flight risk anyway.
He absolutely was. And he, shouldn't have been allowed out on bond anyway, but the community was outraged. They just wanted 30 seconds with him. That's all it would have taken.
Can I just throw a quick shout out to communities that are so enraged with a crime that's been committed in their area that they're the reason that bond isn't granted?
Yep. There were protests outside of the court. Not protests, just mobs of people outside of the courthouse, outside of the police station. And they were shouting exactly what they would do to this man anytime that he was given an escort. Mm-hmm.
We consider a lot of things when we're setting bonds as judges, and attorneys make a lot of arguments about reasons for different levels of bonds. I have never had somebody argue that this person will not be safe in the public. Yep. The defense attorney's like, could you just not give my client bond because he's not safe?
Yeah. Not safe to be.
I'm not saying there hasn't been occasions where that might not be the case, but I've never had anybody make that argument.
Mm-hmm. And it was true in this. I mean, this is shocking. This is 5 kids. I haven't given you details on purpose of the extent of the abuse. I have been just giving
sugar-coated?
You.
This was you sugar-coating for me?
No. For the public, I know child abuse cases are hard for people. We're a little bit more desensitized.
I'm completely desensitized.
And so Landy's book gives much more detail.
Sure.
I feel like let you know these children were physically beaten on to the nth degree on a regular basis. Landy even testifies to how she could hear her toddler sister's head bouncing off from a stair step down painfully, slowly down each stair as she was being drugged down it.
I can't believe that they never accidentally killed one of these kids.
I know. I think it's a miracle.
With this type of abuse. Mm-hmm. And do we know the lasting effects? Like, is there permanent damage to any of these children? Is there brain damage? Of course there's trauma. Please don't at me. I know that.
Right,
but
there are significant delays, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The kids were also, I did want to include this too. It was discovered from the jail that the father was sending people who could rat on him threatening letters, including his wife, who was going to turn state's witness. And then after receiving the letters saying that he would kill her, she testified, she was no longer willing to testify against him. And she flipped on the state and refused to testify against him. Stockholm syndrome, battered woman syndrome. She is diagnosed with it later.
Yeah, but she was a shitty mom to begin with. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I would have charged her and prosecuted her to the fullest extent if she refused to cooperate.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
They absolutely do.
Well, then I guess they did what they could.
She was released on bail for 2,000 Rand.
I don't know what that is.
I did
super
not do
good
the
with
converter.
Numbers and money.
I know.
Not.
Yeah, she did end up getting out on bail, but the kids were given to their aunt. They were not allowed to have contact with their mother or father, of course.
At least there was an appropriate, I hope, family placement.
Well,
oh God,
it's interesting that you say that.
I hate that I read your mind sometimes.
I'm sorry. So they are given to their mother's sister for several months leading up to the trial. And as it happened, it's reported that the aunt's husband ends up sexually molesting Landy and his own stepdaughter.
I am not even shocked.
I know.
Because we've seen this in cases time and time again.
Mm-hmm.
You find out that you're getting a vulnerable child in your home. He obviously was already a predator.
Yeah, he was already abusing the stepdaughter.
Yeah, so he took advantage. She just got a new victim put. And his wife may not have ever even known about it.
She did not. She absolutely did not. This man was charged appropriately. When in jail, he made an unsuccessful attempt at his own life, and then he escaped, and he's been on the run ever since.
Oh, I'm super sorry that he was unsuccessful.
Yeah, and now he's still has
he's
not
at
been,
large.
He is still at large. Yes.
Fantastic. What's his name? Child sexual predator at large in the South African area.
Yeah, no kidding. Then sadly, the aunt, who did not know that this was happening to Landy,
she
did
loses
not know
placement of Landy.
And she didn't know it was happening to her daughter as well. Okay. The kids were removed from her.
Temporarily?
Well, she passed away from heart disease.
Oh, she died?
Yeah.
When the kids were removed?
Yes. Shortly after they were removed from her, she died of heart disease, possibly from the stress of all of this. So, and like I said, he had tried to commit suicide. It didn't work. He escapes, was still at large. So they were, at that point in time, they were split up.
Sure.
Because 5 kids.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a lot of placements that will take 5 kids.
They're in all different placements,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to place teenagers, especially teenagers that have been sexually abused outside of a family placement. She's likely to go into a group home, right? I know how this goes.
For sure. I know. It's like
old as time.
I know. It seems like it's such a textbook situation. It's
I'm sorry
terrible.
that it is.
Yeah, me too.
To all of our listeners, and that we can just kind of guess what's happening next, but we see it.
Yep. All of the time. I will say too that Landy's father tried to commit suicide unsuccessfully in prison as well.
I do not wish to make light of suicide, but if there are ever 2 individuals who needed some more research,
I know.
Maybe do a little bit more research.
Right. Yeah. No, we're not going to be sorry for hating on child abusers and molesters, by the way. He was telling inmates, and this is I'm going to give you this sentence, and it's going to sum up this man for you by one statement that he makes.
Great.
And it pissed the inmates off too.
Yep.
He was telling inmates that he doesn't know why people are making such a big deal about his kids missing school.
That's it?
Yep.
The whole case for him is his kids miss school.
Yep. And that's why he got him removed and why he's being criminally charged. Mm-hmm.
And on your next episode of Jailhouse Justice.
Yes.
I'm sure they loved him in there.
No, not at all. Now, the three younger kids were placed in separate homes because you were asking about this earlier. They actually had such significant issues that the foster families struggled.
Yeah.
These children they're feral. Okay. They have had trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma and never any nurturing or guidance.
They've only known being beaten other than by their big sister who tried.
Yep, exactly. Anger, all of those things. So they end up in children's homes as well because their issues were too great for a foster family to take on.
So sad. Peter
also went through several homes before being placed in a special education center that had living quarters because he was significantly delayed. Now, Landy has struggled as well. At first, she described how she was really mad at her brother for causing all of this because, she didn't understand because she had issues at her first foster placement. And it reinforced this for her, that this was all her brother's fault. Because at least at home, they knew what to expect, right? And they didn't have to deal with strangers. And that's all they had ever known.
Kids, victims of abuse are often resistant to get out of their situation. They are not all happy to be removed.
Absolutely.
Neither domestic violence victims. That's why they recant or refuse to testify often against their spouses or abusers.
Of all of the children that I've removed in my life, in my line of work, I had one 14-year-old boy tell me thank you. And he wore a shirt at his trial that said, "I love my investigator."
Was that my trial?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so
I know that trial.
Out of all of them, there was only one who was ever glad to be removed from the situation. This is very
at
common.
least at the time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm sure she's happy now that she was removed from that situation.
Well, let me tell you about this.
Okay.
So she gets moved to different foster homes and as you had indicated, placements, centers, things like that. But she does get placed with a foster family that she bonds with. And this changes her entire perspective.
All you need is one person, guys.
Yep.
One stable person as an adult when you're a child. And resiliency, it builds it, changes your life.
Yep. And it did for Landy. After this, after she clicks and bonds with this foster family and really gets to see what a real family is like, she realizes how terrible her living situation really was. And she realizes that her brother is actually a hero. And she calls him her hero.
Oh,
now,
my heart.
They all have very strong feelings about their mother and how their mom, in their eyes, supported her husband and not them, even after hearing at the trial about the rape of Landy. Because remember, the mom wasn't there.
Right. We don't know if she knew or not.
Landy is of the opinion that she didn't know about it until the trial. And even then, she was still willing to sit there through the trial, literally holding his hand through his trial, okay, and supporting him and not being willing to testify against him. So that's really all the kids needed to see.
That's
is
disgusting.
that you have now heard all of the things that this
and you're
man
still holding
did
his
to
hand.
us. Yep, exactly. Because
well,
at first,
if it didn't solidify that termination of parental rights should occur with her because potentially she's a victim, it happened there.
Yeah.
And I've had those cases too.
Yeah.
They come in, it's a fail to protect. You're a little bit on the wall. Did she really know everything? Should we work on reunifying? Mm-hmm. And then you get to a point where you've been told everything. You sat through therapy. You've listened to your kids say this stuff, and you're still choosing to stand by your man, Ms. Wynette, and here you are.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, you guys, I'm fine with the termination.
That's where we
to
go.
happen.
Yeah. I agree. So at first, when this all first started to shake down, her and Peter were of the opinion that she was a victim too. But after the trial and everything plays out, they realize, holy shit, no, you're still choosing him. Forget it. We have no love for you anymore.
She was a victim. Mm-hmm. She was also a perpetrator.
Exactly. Yep. Both of those things can be true at the same time.
Yes.
Now, I will say this was good. They did not have to testify in the same place as their father. They allowed them to do it from the judge's chambers.
Okay. So, on closed circuit television?
Yes. So they did
remotely.
not have to sit in the same room as their dad and testify.
That is becoming more common. I'm assuming here it would require a special motion for accommodations, but I can see where in that type of a case, as a judge, I'm very careful about that. People have a right to confrontation to confront the person who's their accuser. But there are very specific times when that might be appropriate. And from what this sounds like, it may be one that I would even grant.
Mm-hmm. What really upset the kids is that the father's lawyer argued that, and this is so fucking classic, that Landy had seduced him and that he didn't actually think that Landy was his real daughter anyway. So that's why he did it.
Oh, fuck. As a former prosecutor, when that becomes the defense, when it becomes apparent, I feel like I've already won.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I knew exactly how to combat those. I mean, this is just fantastic.
Yep.
You know why? Because no jurors sitting, none of them are going to ever think that it's okay for their own child to seduce them into engaging in sexual activity. Correct. Unless they're a pedophile.
And that's what they're trying to say. Yes, that's what you're trying to say.
Lack of defense.
Right. You're trying to say that any man is susceptible to his 16-year-old daughter being able to seduce him?
Right.
No, those jurors are sitting there going, nope, no way.
I cannot relate to this.
Nope, exactly. Yeah. Now, the son, in terms of what he did to Peter, his defense was that Peter...
He was a shit.
No.
Peter's a little shit, no?
Peter asked to be tied up.
Oh.
And the only time that he hit Peter was in self-defense because, little Peter, who was emaciated and people couldn't tell he was 11 years old, was going to beat up a steroid, jacked up, moldy, 40-some-year-old man.
I'm sorry. Did he take the stand himself and say these things?
He did not testify for himself.
So the defense attorneys, these were the defenses that they had come up with, probably with Peter, because you want to consult them. And so this is where they were going with their cross-examination of the children and other witnesses.
Yes. When Peter heard this, he became so enraged that he started screaming at the facilitator to tell his father to stop lying.
Oh.
I know. That really Really, really hurt him. The other thing is, too, the mom put the blame on Peter and just said he was a very naughty boy, and he made him beat him.
He made him time. He made him. Oh my God, man!
You're just dropping everything.
It wasn't the dicks this time. It was a water bottle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That he was so naughty that it made him have to be beaten. Okay.
Yeah. I'm former.
So there's again no defense.
Nope. Former prosecutor here sitting there going, this case just keeps getting better for me if this is what we're going with.
Perfect segue, because I'm going to tell you what the father was found guilty of.
Oh, I am anxiously awaiting.
He's found guilty of the abuse and rape of his oldest daughter, the attempted murder of his son, obstruction of justice relating to the initial on-site search, 5 charges of child abuse, 5 counts of child neglect, 2 charges of breaking the Schools Act, because 2 kids were under school age still.
Yes.
Okay. Showing pornographic material to his underage daughter, and using and distributing crystal methamphetamine. The mother was found guilty during her trial of child neglect, but not abuse, as it was determined that she really did not abuse the children, like take part in physically abusing the children.
No,
it was failure to protect. Okay.
Or provide with basic needs.
Yes. Yep. So, and they believe that any part that she did take in, in terms of like not intervening, and complacency, was done under duress. All of the kids.
We did hear that there were times that
she was tied up. Yep, she was physically beaten.
She had to be back at a certain amount of time. He made her come to work with him. She took the kids to the hospital and then had to hurry back. And okay, I'll buy it for sake of the argument.
Mm-hmm. The kids all wrote very powerful victim impact statements that were read in court. Some of Peter, quote, "I hate him so much I would kill him if I could. I wish there were people in jail that would hurt him. I wish there was someone who would have a blowtorch."
There are, Peter.
For sure. Who would have a blowtorch, who would hit him, who would shock him. I sometimes see the scars that he gave me and I hate him. I don't want to be his son. I wish I could get another surname.
I want to hug him.
I know.
So bad.
He's so angry. Peter has a lot of anger.
I think that's healthy and workable.
Yes, most definitely.
I'll take an angry kid any day, outwardly angry, than the kid that doesn't process any of it.
Right, and is just like an emotional stone.
You get some sociopathic shit going on there then, and other issues.
Yep.
We see a lot of them later.
And Peter is just very rightfully angry. He's angry at his mom.
Good.
He said, she never even cried when he hurt me. She never tried to stop him. She never loved me. I know I did the right thing. I think he would have killed me.
Yes.
You're absolutely right, Peter.
Yes.
I think he absolutely would
Peter,
have to.
you
that
and
he
your
wouldn't
siblings,
have stopped.
No.
None of this ever would have stopped until he was stopped.
Nope.
I don't even think killing a child would have stopped him. He would have just taken the remainder of his rage out on the other 4 children.
Well, and if he was lucky enough that it would have been one of the younger ones that accidentally died first, like swinging them around by their ankles and, into a table or a chair, whatever it was, they weren't registered. So it could have been a long time before he was even found out.
Absolutely. Just buried in the backyard.
Landy was the only one who had a registered birth certificate.
Yep.
So even Peter didn't as well either. So it would have been fine if he was the one to go, in parents' opinion.
Landy's victim impact statement talked about how she would try to keep the younger kids out of sight, hoping that it would mean if they were out of sight, they were out of his mind. She talked about how he hit Peter all the time, how they all got hit with PVC pipes, canes, her younger sister being dragged down the steps by her hair. She put all of this in her victim impact statement, saying, I remember the sound of her head hitting every step on the way down, and how Peter was hung from the rafters to be beaten. And she said that so much happened that I can't even remember it all. About her mother, she simply said that she was there for all of it and she never tried to stop it. Both Peter and Landy asked for the judge to give prison time for their parents, of course. Psychologists did testify about the evaluations that they did on the father for the pre-sentencing hearing, and they said that he had a lack of insight into the extent and consequences of his crimes, to such an extreme extent that they had never even seen it this extreme and this bad before. Like, this guy has such a bad disconnect. It's because of that statement that I told you before, where he says, I don't know why they're making such a big deal about my kids missing school. That's what the psychologists are testifying about.
Dude, I can see this.
They're like,
this kid, his dad killed his mom, shot and killed her, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he was 17. And tried to kill himself, but wasn't successful, right? Mm-hmm. So Yeah, he they destroyed him to start with.
Yes. And the psychologists say that he is a psychopath and he's a significant threat to society. And they also classified him as a sadist.
Oh, yeah.
For psychological evaluations of the mother, they diagnosed her as suffering from battered woman syndrome and Stockholm syndrome. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm
having a hard
stumbling
time
over these words.
With Stockholm.
Which is why she could not intervene when her children were being abused. Now, the sentencing, after all of that, the father was sentenced to 35 years in prison.
Okay.
The mother was sentenced to 5 years for not providing basic care despite her syndromes. The father claims that he'll be filing appeals and on his convictions because he's denying it all.
He's denying what all?
All of it. He didn't. No, his kids just missed school.
Well, if his appeal is that he does not deserve 35 years for missing school, I feel like the judge will agree.
Right. You're right. That's
right,
not why you're getting 35 years.
You are right, sir. You are accurate. That's not what you were convicted of.
Correct.
And that part you deserve.
Yep.
Have a good day.
Right.
We're
done here.
I'm sorry. Have the day you deserve.
Yes. Whatever that may be. So he made a statement to the press that said, quote, "I just want 2 minutes to tell my children that I am sorry. I love them and I will never give up on them.
Fuck you, man.
I hurt them and I do not know why I did it. I was stupid and idiotic and I can't understand why I did it." End quote. The prison inmate told one of the media outlets when they asked him, so the prison inmate was like, "So why'd you keep your kids, out of the school?" This asshole told the prison inmate, "The world's an ugly place. I thought my wife was homeschooling them that entire time. And you know what? My wife was actually the controlling one and the abusive one."
My God.
Yep.
I thought she was homeschooling him when you forced me to come to work with you, when you forced her to go to work with you.
Right. Yep. And his wife who stood by him on the trial, and then now he's going around and telling anybody that'll listen that he's in there for 35 years because his wife lied and she wasn't homeschooling them and she was the abusive and controlling one.
About the educational neglect, the truancy.
But
that's
remember
only
what
part
the
of it.
psychologist said. He has such a disconnect between his crimes and reality to the extent that they have never seen it this bad before.
You molested your daughter. You tried to kill your son. You beat your small toddlers. Sir.
Yep.
Sir.
Yep. No,
and he listened to it all get presented in front of him at trial, but that's still what he took out of it.
Yep. That his wife wasn't homeschooling them and that she was the controlling one. Landy, I'll tell you a little bit about Landy.
Okay.
She hopes to have children of her own and adopt children because she now understands how many kids there are that are in orphanages and in need. Because of her great experience with her new foster parents that she bonded with, she'd like to give it back someday. And she openly says in her book how much she loves them, her foster parents.
Amazing.
Peter is struggling with emotions. He's very angry. He's catching up on his missed education, and he has a long way before he feels caught up in normal. The scars on his body are a constant reminder of what was done to him. So emotionally, he still has a long way to go. And like I said, Landy did write a book about this. It's only available in Afrikaans at this time. Hopefully one day it gets made available to English. And if it does, I will post it. And that is the Springs House of Horrors case.
She's us.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
Thank you.
That's that, guys. I am sorry.
It was a great case suggestion, though. And you said you've been sitting on it for a while to do it justice. And I'm glad you did.
I didn't. I wasn't going to give. We often don't give really nitty gritty details over and over again about child abuse. So I did not go in depth into all of that, but I painted a picture anyway, as much as I could, so that we still don't lose listeners throughout this episode. So is a tough one. But
will you please bathe me? Or
I will bathe you.
Shower me or sponge bathe me or whatever you're into today.
All of it.
Excellent.
Let's first sponge bathe and then just full on shower. But
okay.
This was sent by
suds.
What did you say earlier? Everything's better with bubbles.
Everything's better with bubbles. I did say that.
So this was sent by a listener as well. Man cuts off his own penis in sleep while dreaming that he was chopping meat.
Oh my God.
Oh, sir, you were chopping meat.
Now that's a nightmare.
Not a porterhouse.
No,
I mean, I shouldn't assume, but
I mean, it could have been a strip steak.
it could have been. Oh, this poor man.
I did not mean to make light of his genitals.
Oh God,
I
it
am
wasn't
so
just-
sorry.
It wasn't just his penis, Megan.
It was the
Shit.
twig and berries.
Yeah, he got the twig and berries.
All of it.
Yeah.
What the fuck was he drink? He was high.
Well, a man in Ghana has cut his own penis and scrotum off in his sleep while dreaming that he was chopping meat, waking up in horror before calling neighbors for help. Oh, gosh.
Why was he holding a knife in his sleep?
Well, after dreaming about slaughtering a goat, the 47-year-old woke up in shock after feeling sharp pains coming from his penis and scrotum. So what I can understand, because the rest of this article is not in English, he apparently
Just read it. Do your best.
Oh, God.
I'm kidding.
I de sit inside chair wheels, I doze off, so I de sleep, I dream, say I de cut meat, where they in front of me.
Good job. Sounds right to me.
So he was taken to a hospital for treatment. They said he may need surgery. Thank you for that.
I can't.
It's a direct quote.
I can't. I'm crying.
They said he may need surgery.
I'm crossing my legs right now.
Oh,
He may need surgery.
Yeah.
Really?
His injuries weren't life-threatening, though, so that's good.
It can be when you take all of that. I mean, there's some significant arteries and veins and shit. So I'm at a loss. I lost the ability to speak just now. He cut his entire penis and scrotum off, and
but
they
only
didn't.
the
Did they sew it on? Was it savable?
It doesn't say. The thing is that
He might need surgery.
how he became we're not really sure. He has no idea how he started sleeping like with a knife in his hand. Okay. And he actually called for help while still dreaming. It actually sounds like this man possibly sleepwalks, Megan. And has it because once he came full to,
Yeah.
and
I
he
am so
realizes that
sorry,
he's
sir.
in intense pain, he's already on the phone.
He's got his
with authorities.
dick in his hand
Literally in one hand, the
and
phone in the other.
other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's terrible.
This reminds me, our one Brain Bath only episode, which only you Patreons are aware of, where we talked about sleep, dreaming, things people say in sleepwalking. And you explained about how there's certain mental illnesses basically because of these sleep disorders. Oh, I think he had one.
Yep. So his wife received a distressed call from a neighbor explaining that her husband was bleeding profusely as he had cut off his manhood with a sharp knife. She quickly rushed home and found him sitting on a chamber pot full of blood with his penis in his hand, and she brought diapers to support her husband from losing his manhood and took him to a local hospital for medical attention. She got to him before the paramedics. Damn! I don't think I bathed you. I think I just gave another crime story. Oh, the
I'm shaking this for all of you men. Grab your bits. You should have told them to grab their bits before you started.
You know what is ironic about all of this? The
They were
raccoon,
both holding penises here?
Well, the raccoon penis bones that I'm shaking have been dismembered from these raccoons' bodies. Oh.
And I'd like to make a public service announcement. Whether you're stone cold sober, high, whatever you do, or drunk, men, do not sleep with a knife near you, okay?
Especially if you're at risk for sleep disorders.
And if you sleepwalk, I highly suggest that you put child locks on your sharps drawers.
Yeah.
And that's
I think
all.
you should. I think you
That's
should.
all I've got.
Just for the sake of your nuts and berries. Yeah. Yeah. Nuts and berries. Those are the same thing. Twigs and berries. Sorry.
Yeah.
My brain is dead. Yeah.
Thanks for the brain bath, Charnell.
Kind of. It was more like a bloodbath, and I apologize.
It was. Jason, our friend Jason, once referred to this as bloodbath jokingly or like on accident.
Yeah,
and
he
he's
did.
right. You
Yeah.
blood bathed me today.
I did. I apologize. With penis blood.
There
at
was
that.
no soap. There was no soap.
There wasn't. None of us feel clean. Shit. Sorry, guys. But we love you anyway. Thank you for listening, especially after that. And we hope that you keep listening, and we hope you keep it curious. Follow us on social media. If you want to binge, we have hundreds of extra content for you to binge on our Patreon site. So if you want to join Patreon, jump on there. It's just patreon.com/crimecurious. So we're there, and it helps keep us on the air and keep us creating. So until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.